involved in that. But I think give yourself a try. Have you been going? Like stuff? I don't even know what's being talked about. What's being talked about? Yeah. Check. More stories.
Yeah, Mummy and Daddy, what did you do on the test?
Okay.
Are you going to tell any of yours?
Yes.
I remember because I don't know if I talked to you or who, because I was working for APN. For APN, I worked for them as a product manager in their online, the digital business. Fiona, that's right. And so for some reason we were like having conversations about your blog. Because you were stuck on that old CMS. And then you, yeah.
Oh, that's what, yeah.
Is it? Okay.
And our site does a whole lot of things that does with the layout. Like our photo capabilities.
I've been in the IT world my whole career, but I always like headed for project management initially because I just wanted to be like the guy in charge. Totally nearly killed me. 3 times I was like just a bit crazy with the stress of it. Until I migrated to like product management. I worked for the BBC as a product manager for a while. And then I came back to New Zealand. And I was like, the best job I could get was like product manager for the listeners. So that's when I got the job as product manager for the listeners. And then I just decided, again, through with all this management stuff, I'm going to be a developer. So I've been a developer for the last 3 years.
Back on the tools, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really satisfying. I'm slightly getting my taste back for it now. I've been to, you involved in like the agile community at all?
No,
It's amazing. It's like, for me, it's I wish this community was around when I was first starting to be a project manager. These are my people. These are my sort of people. They talk about feelings and they talk about like stuff that I was interested in. Instead I went along to Project Management Institute of New Zealand conferences and they were like the driest, nastiest
especially when I was in Computerworld, all industry things were sometimes not like that. Very straight and white.
very dry,
but one night a lawyer who reviewed GAYE for dictionary said, "Come to the toilet for a fair speech." Okay. Wound up like on the Titanic dance party up on the boat on the harbour 2 hours later.
You found your people.
Yeah, I found my people. Yeah.
Thank God, like thank God. I never found those people. I was just like lost in a straight, repressed, emotionally like backward land where people only start to talk once they get past it. Oh my God. But the world has moved on, and the agile world is where I found the people that I'm like, okay, these are the people, and it's rejuvenating my energy for what I love, which is developing software well, and not necessarily having to do it myself, actually like putting teams together.
Yeah, I must say when I worked for IDT, that was actually it was literally the local branch of IDG who were quite a force. We were treated quite well, and there was quarterly staff lunch where they would bring in temps to run the front desk and take everyone, except for people who couldn't handle it, to a lunch that would just every time get out of control.
Yeah.
The boss didn't mind it, outside for that noise.
Yeah. It's that humanness at work. That's what I feel is creeping back in.
So, I mean, given that it was a multinational project, it actually felt like working for but that got killed off by trading.
Yep.
And then my covered trading never suspected that very soon we suck up the lifeblood. It was recruitment. And why would you buy a newspaper? That's ridiculous.
Sign of the pros. Oh, right. See, we don't really know what we can say about the eye contact and arrows. But I think we guys had, I think you did a presentation for the 7 photographs of start screening about 1992. So, always been there watching your work and appreciating the efforts you take across everything.
Oh, cheers. Oh, thanks for coming tonight. We had a rather short, publicity run up on this one. But I think we'll do it.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah. It's nice to get out and see you guys. But yeah, anyway, I'll leave you to it.
Cool.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best while you're here. You know.
I'll just sing with you. So, start. Really Cooper Barling.
Yes. See what they come up with. Not sweet.
We'll have what did you say?
We'll have 5 microphones.
How long is the time? 7 on the device.
20 minutes.
Synchronise on
Exciting and new. Come aboard. We're expecting you and love. Life's sweetest reward. Let it flow. It floats back to you. Soon we'll be making another run. The love boat promises something for everyone. Set a course for adventure, your mind on a new romance. And love won't hurt anymore. It's an open smile on a friendly shore. It's love. Welcome aboard, it's
It's a curious thing. Make a one man weep, make another man sing. Change your heart to a little white dove. More than a feeling, that's the power of love. Tougher than diamonds, rich like cream. Stronger and harder than a bad girl's dream. Make a bad one good, make her all right. Power of love that keep you home at night. Don't need money, don't take fame. Don't need no credit card to ride this train. It's starting and sudden, and it's cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life. That's the power of love. That's the power of love. First time you feel it, it might make you sad. Next time you feel it, it might make you mad. You'll be glad, baby, when you found. That's the power makes the world around. Don't take money, don't take fame. Don't need no credit card to ride this train. Starting and sudden, it can be cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life. They say that all in love is fair, yeah, but you don't care. But you know what to do when it gets on you. And with a little help from above, you feel the power of love. Feel the power of love. Can you feel it?
Do you have an order? I do.
You'll know that first. Did you not read your run sheet?
I looked at it, I glanced at it, I was waiting somebody bring
No, it's the loading first, and then...
So you don't want everybody joining up and then
No,
you'll join us.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just loiter and you can come in later on.
Don't take money, don't take fame. Don't need no credit card to ride this train. Tougher than iron, stronger than steel. You won't feel nothing till you feel. Feel the power, just feel the power of love.
leaving. Said to myself, what's it all about? Now I know there can be no doubt. You can do magic. You can have anything that you desire. Magic. And you know you're the one who can put out the fire. You know darn well when you cast your spell, you get your way. When you hypnotize with your eyes.
We will be starting soon. We were just about to start, but you geeks will love this. We had a Facebook live stream going as well as the YouTube stream, and Facebook picked up the music from DJ Doug Pound here and kicked us off. Their content ID picked up a copyright infringement. Yeah, well, that might work. But yeah, that's never happened before. Yeah. So we'll be with you very soon.
It's not a comedy, folks. So these are safe seats.
I'll do one.
So where are you from, man? Right.
I know you don't like it.
That's my wine.
One more song?
Probably actually leave it off just while we get the stream up. If it bounced us off last time, then.
Public domain music library. Actually, party. That's so weird. This is all part of the new Zuckerberg business.
That's better. Thanks, Doug. He was playing royalty-free music. It was the only reason we're online. No mai, haere mai, and welcome to Orcon IRL, the Techweek edition, or as it may also be known, Mummy and Daddy, what did you do in the tech wars? This presentation tonight may contain swearing. Indeed, I'll be disappointed if it doesn't. What we'll try and cover in our special way is the evolution of the tech sector in New Zealand via the experiences of our guests. And also via me. I was an IT journalist a long time ago and I saw some crazy shit, believe me. Some housekeeping. The talk part of the evening will conclude around 8:30 and WCB, William Cooper Barling, will play in there at 8:45. Before that happens, there'll be a final talk part and that'll be us answering your questions, which you can submit over, is it there on the bar? There's a jar saying suggestions about halfway down the bar here, and you may submit questions that are serious, irreverent, farcical, rude, and we will attempt to answer them. In that time there will be 3 10-minute breaks for you to go to the bar or the toilet. Only one of those make host Matthew Crawley some money. Thanks to Matthew, by the way, he's always really good. And to Hugh and the crew at 95 BFM who are delivering the live stream of this evening, and as ever to Orcon for making all this possible. It's time now to welcome our first 2 guests. The first, Katie Graham, came to my attention as one of the people who built the Swish News Songbroker website with her company Delicious Mint. Developer Webscope and the Bitcoin money box, My Bitcoin Saver. Along with Katie will be Heather GAYE, who became a software developer in 1995. Since then, she's worked with Datacom, nzmusic.com, the New Zealand Olympic Committee, SmokeCDs and WINZ. She currently wrangles big data as technical director of Web Wonks, and she's totes indie. So please welcome them both. And before we start, I'd like to roll one of the first of several videos tonight from a project called Down to the Wire. It's a great New Zealand internet history project made by a company called Heyday in 2010. And it's downtothewire.co.nz, and it really is worth a look. Anyway, Hugh, if we're ready, could we have a look at Robin Gallagher talking about building her first website?
What? sparked it off was I'd moved from a different ISP that had a flat rate dial-up account, $60 a month, and with that was some web hosting space. So I thought, okay, I'll do something with it. And I had some friends who had websites, but back then it was literally just, this is my website, this is a bit about me, send me an email. So I thought, okay, well, you know, I could do at least that. So I sort of sat down, taught myself basic HTML, and then sort of had figured out how to make web pages, how to link, how to put images in and little things like that. Then I thought, well, okay, I've got to put something on it. So I just wrote a few things. One of them was a manifesto of what my website would not include, and just a few other things, and a few links to friends' websites, put them up, and had offended someone within an hour, so that was really awesome.
Heather, take me back to your first website.
My first website was pretty much the same thing as what Robin's describing, except I started with, it was an exercise to learn PHP and to learn how to be a web developer. Because you
were already a software developer by that point.
I was already a software developer, yeah. So I put together my first website. It was probably around about 2005.
That's quite late.
Robin predates us all. She's the first. She's like the dream.
Yeah, and I must say, actually, also, Robin Gallagher has just completed a really interesting project called 5,000 Ways, where she tracked down every single New Zealand on air funded music video. Some of them cannot be found. They're gone, but she has written about every single one, and there are a lot. It's really worth having a look at that. Katie, what was your first website?
I think it was maybe 1995, 1996, and it was, you know, the time of GeoCities, and we had the internet at home. I think it was $4.95 an hour for 14.4K through Extra, and yeah, I spent like all my pocket money on the internet, and at one point I figured out you could right-click and kind of view source, and I started figuring out, you know, how to build HTML sites, and I can't even remember what I wrote about. I think I just kind of had to find things to write about so I could have a website.
Right, so that was actually building the website was the thing, and then you had to fill it.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah. At what point did you think this could be a job?
It actually took a really long time because I didn't want to get paid for it because I thought it would make it not fun anymore. So for quite a few years I would just build websites for friends in exchange for a bottle of whiskey, and that was all good. And yeah, I think it wasn't until maybe like 10 years ago that I started taking it seriously as a career.
Heather, was it different for you shifting from being, I mean, you work for companies like Datacom, and that's not exactly glamorous, and it's not public facing.
That was awesome. That was a great place to work.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You know, they're a good company, very successful company. But was there a point where you thought, hang on, I actually want to build these things rather than actually be writing code?
Yep. Oh, well, I mean, like I was writing code, but I wanted to be a web developer. And I'd been working in like apps development for a while. Obviously a number of government departments and that were Datacom clients. And at that point I was writing some horrible real estate software, and it wasn't particularly appealing, and just, yeah, I wanted to do web development.
What was the industry like at that time?
I don't know, I wasn't.
Because I remember as a journalist, it was pretty straight and white. It wasn't very interesting.
Well, I was
the
in
parties
a very
weren't very good.
white organisation, but yeah, I don't know. Like my actual experience of web at that point was nzmusic.com, and that were just like the cool indie kids, and they were doing these cool indie things. And
you worked on that too, didn't you?
Eventually, yeah. Just as it was starting to wind down, actually.
Katie, you're a music person as well, because did you play in bands before you started coding or at the same time? How do the two relate?
I don't know that they necessarily relate, apart from perhaps I also studied audio engineering straight out of high school, and I think I've kind of always been involved in technical things, and so I think it kind of comes from that. But with, you know, music, obviously there's a lot of creativity and passion, and I actually think it's the same with coding. Like, you have to be creative sometimes to solve problems, and whether it's from like the technical perspective or the design and UI perspective, I think it's possibly the same parts of your brain that are engaged in those. Yeah.
I guess it's also that you don't have to work 9 to 5 either.
Yeah.
So music and coding you can both do in the middle of the night. Was that an appeal?
Yeah, definitely. Wearing pyjamas, staying at home, living the dream.
Yeah, working like 3 a.m. through to midnight instead of 9 to 5.
Yeah, and Heather, you're working with Web Wonks now, but for quite a lot of time you've been an independent developer.
Yes.
It seems like that's an advantage, particularly as a woman, to be able to actually run your own business.
Well,
do
I
what you
wasn't
want to
technically
do.
running my own business. I was contracting out to a couple of other developers who were basically farming me work, and around about the time I actually sort of started really sort of chucking myself out at my own clients was around about the time that like the job I'm in now was pretty much one of my earlier contracts, and I liked the company so much I hung around.
Right. I think we'll look at one more video now from the Down to the Wire series. Hugh, can we look at Brenda speaking? A lot of you will know Brenda Lewinberg.
In around 1996, I started a group called Web Girls in New Zealand, and it was part of an international movement, if you like, or an international set of groups started in the US. And the idea behind Web Girls was that at that time, being online was quite isolating, and people were doing it or were working with the internet in their own little pockets of in their homes or in their offices or whatever. And there were women online, but not that many. And it was quite for some women, it was quite a daunting place, and particularly it was like things asking the dumb questions, how do I do this, how do I get that? And at that time, if you walked into a Dick Smith and you were a woman and you asked a question, you just got treated like, total piece of shit. That people would automatically talk to the guy that came with you, even if he was 12. Like, it was just really crazy. So Web Girls was a place where women could ask the dumb questions, could enthuse about technology, could share their sort of experiences. It really hit a note at that time, and we used to have gatherings of sort of, in cafes or whatever, where people would come and we'd teach basic kind of, this is what HTML is, or this is how a web page works, or this is how you use groups, use net groups. And we had a couple of times we had evenings of product indulgence and techno lust, and we'd get, Apple would come and bring the latest computers, and Dell would bring their latest stuff, and we'd have wine and walk around and geek around and stuff. But, yeah.
So I guess the question there is, have things improved, one, and two, are there equivalents to Web Girls now? And do you participate?
Yeah, well, I think the same thing still happens to some extent. I think, even though I was talking about, being in audio and different industries like that, kind of no matter where you are, often there's a man who comes up and asks if you need a hand.
You're kind of a glutton for punishment, being a woman audio engineer. Even if you're really good at it, someone will assume that you don't know what you're doing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But I think, these days at least, we talk about things, and there's definitely a lot of groups. So there's like the Women in Tech group in Auckland, so that's like a meetup, and there's a Slack group as well, and we've got a Slack group for diversity in tech, and there's other meetups like Refactor, which used to be Girl Geek Dinners, and groups like She Sharp. I'm probably forgetting a ton of them.
Right, because we were going to have Alice Gatlin from BFM along, and she helps run Girl Code, which is real entry-level stuff, which sounds pretty neat. But you, Heather, do you participate in such groups?
Refactor, definitely. Generally, I don't know.
That's someone from Datacom, formerly.
Yeah, Refactor is probably about the only one that I really sort of fully participate in.
Have things? How bad did it get? What was the worst experience of tech industry sexism? Because I remember a lot of things being sausage fests.
I've gotten off very, very lightly. I think the only thing that I noticed possibly when I was new in my career was that people were quite lenient on me in a way that they weren't lenient on men in the organisation. So I've been very lucky, I think.
Well, I was kind of racking my brain earlier trying to think, because there's definitely been examples over the years, and off the top of my head I can't think of anything really serious, but one kind of weird thing I thought it was back when I was just working from home, like maybe 5 years ago. A client came over to my house for a meeting, so we're sitting on on my couch having the meeting, and then kind of out of the blue he says, I think it's kind of strange that you're doing this, because I think women should just stay at home and be raising kids. And I was like, how do I respond to that? Like, why are you hiring me if that's what you think?
That is really weird.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that he sort of tried it on or something.
No.
How would young women best get into what you're doing now? Would you recommend it? Because, I face this with journalism. Journalism's awesome, but would I recommend it as a career? Probably not.
Well, no, I absolutely do recommend it, and I'm a strong believer that anyone can learn how to code, and I think that everyone should give it a go. Like, sure, not everyone's going to be some, computer science engineer creating, machine learning software or something like that. But I think anyone can learn how to do some basic coding, and I think they should. And I think Heather has some good points to touch on that.
Oh, I'm basically channeling Sasha Judd, who is a very technical person, very high up, and she's a director of Silverstripe. And then she spoke at Webstock at the beginning of this year about One Direction. And basically encouraging, in particular, younger women and teenage girls who are actually already doing tech without realising into the tech industry. And I don't think she really has any answers just yet, but her point was there are a lot of people online, and I'm really into K-pop at the moment, and I deal with a lot of younger women online, sort of maybe 18 through to 30, and who are all doing these amazing things. They put together the websites, and they're like organising worldwide, like not just technology but like business acumen, and so.
So they're already using tools and they're organising.
Yes, yeah,
and they should make the next step.
Yeah, there was one girl, Belinda, who she wanted to sort of upgrade her Tumblr feed to a new website. So I basically just pointed her at Squarespace, and within 2 hours she's got a website, and bam. And it's entirely, I think these women aren't necessarily recognise that they have technical aptitude, but they're all clearly competent. They're all clearly able to, you sit them down and you put something in front of them and they'll work it out. And I think that's probably something that's possibly an area where, like when people are hiring, I think competence, that air of being able to work something out is probably a really, really valuable skill beyond necessarily what's on your CV.
Yeah, problem solving, identifying the problem and solving it. Yeah. We're going to take a break on that note now, and we'll come back with an embiggened panel with the old white men on it. So, Doug, play us some library music. Hopefully we won't get kicked off Facebook, which hasn't ever actually happened before. We've had music playing for hours. And so that's interesting.
One person gets murdered live and then it's all over.
Yes, exactly. One person gets murdered live. It wasn't Huey Lewis. Anyway, please thank our panellists. They'll be back soon. Cheers.
Bong, a bing bing bong, a bing bing bong, bing 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 bong, bing bong, a bing bing bong, a bing bing bong, bing 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 bong, bing bong, a bing bing bong, a bing bing bong, bing 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 bong, bing bong, a bing bing bong, a bing bing bong, bing 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 bong, bing bong, bing bing bong, bing. Bing bong, bing bing bong, bing 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 bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bing bong, bing 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 bong.
I'd really love to check out what the heck's going on there. It's pretty awesome. But then again, don't have a folder on.
Thanks for cheering.
Well, welcome back to Orcon IRL, the Techweek edition, and to the old white guys part of the evening. I know, you never see old white guys anywhere, do you? We've really felt we should be diverse and include some.
We are. We're feeling it
both
today.
younger than me, actually. We're joined now by former Computerworld editor, former TUANZ CEO, and current practitioner of public relations, Paul BRISLEN.
Good evening. That's like it. There we go.
And Nat, talking to Nat's done many things, most of them legal. He authored the Pearl Cookbook. He was a trend spotter for O'Reilly Media. He founded Kiwi Foo Camp. And he made New Zealand's first ever website.
Yes. No. Yes. With your banjo. Way back in the dark days.
With his banjo. We probably don't need to watch all of this, but let's have a little look at the next thing that Nat did after building the Victoria University website. Hugh, could we see the Colin Jackson clip, please?
That would have been about 94, 95 that we first put it together. I was one of the people involved in that, although I can't claim all the credit. Nat Talkington up at the university had a bit to do with it. The basic deal was that I was in the Ministry of Commerce, as then became the Ministry of Economic Development later. So it's part of the New Zealand government. We had a very sympathetic minister, a man named Maurice Williamson, who also realised just how huge the internet was going to be. He was behind us. My boss was behind me. And essentially what I did, though, the problem here was that how could I ever go to the IT department of a government department and say, I want a web server? And this is back like in the early to the mid-90s. I mean, you could imagine how hard that would have been. So I didn't even attempt that. What I did was this deal with Nat Talkington up at the university. And of course, up at the university, they could just throw a web server up. In fact, they already had several. They were playing with it. They thought it was marvellous. They understood the technology. I kind of figured out how to get documents out of government departments. So I did the deal with Nat. I put up the web server. I ended up writing quite a lot of the early material on it. There wasn't really a proper explanation of, say, the MMP electoral system that was just coming in, or even our constitution. So quite a lot of that I just wrote. I got a proper version of the Treaty of Waitangi, together with a scholarly modern translation of the Maori version, and we put that up there as well. And then I started hawking around to all these government departments, other departments apart from the one I was working in, and I'd invite their communications people.
That's enough of Colin.
I do actually have a screenshot of that original New Zealand government website that we'll show you later.
Don't look. That was us.
This is like
it looks like an early 90s website, let's put it that way. Nat, what was it like doing that stuff? I get the impression that it was all a skunk works, and because there was no policy, you could kind of just do things. Was that the...
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was all new, nobody had ever done it before. Nobody had made any rules to say, no, you can't do that. The same problem that he faced, right? There weren't any rules that said, this is how you should go about getting money for your web server, and this is which department will pay for it. What is this web thing? The comms team don't know about it. The tech team don't know about it. The people up at the university know about it. And so Colin was the chap inside government who was far-sighted and visionary and all of those things, and able to see, actually, this is going to be huge, we should have the government's information on it. And he was coming at it from the government side, whereas I was one of those idealistic, and still am, information should be free, this is an incredible medium for changing the way people interact with the world around them and the knowledge that lives in it, and get it out of books and the hands of the government printing office and into the online realm. And so I was the tech idealist, and he, while definitely idealistic, was also far more the realpolitik, sort of let's snaffle some money from this budget. If I talk to this person, I can get that and look the other way about that. It was, he was definitely the making it happen guy within the halls.
And then not long after that, you actually absconded to the US, and...
With all the money.
I use the word absconded kindly. That must have been quite an experience, because I'm guessing that things were quite a lot more advanced there.
Yeah, it was, well, yes, it was an experience. No, it wasn't, because it was more advanced. In the very first days of building the web, we in New Zealand were doing just as cutting-edge stuff as people anywhere in the world, because it hadn't been done before. Anybody who did it the first time was, by definition, breaking new ground and ahead of the game. I suppose you're right. By the time 95 came around, when I went to the States, they had adopted it much faster as a country. So the public, the mainstreaming of the internet had begun and was well underway, to the point where I was in New York City and I saw my first ever billboard with a URL on it, and http:// like punctuation all over a billboard. But looking at
what was the URL? Who was it?
I think it was like Budweiser. It was a beer company, and which was very American. So I was looking at that and thinking, the fuck's happening here? Because this is something that's been in my world. This is something that I do up in Auckland University, in Victoria University, and I'm maybe talking to the other folks around universities, and then it's getting a little bit more public, and maybe there are people who want us to build websites. One of the first ones that I built that wasn't for the university or for the government was for an architect. And you're full of conversations about why it can't look like a printed document because you've only got 16 colours, all those kinds of things. You had a fun conversation with Victoria University about why we couldn't get their exact shade of green. It's like, which of the 16 do you want? I suggest you pick green. But going to the States, and they've got so many more people out there.
And more colours.
You could do, and more colours by that stage. You could do something like put a billboard up with Budweiser's URL on it, and some percentage of the population would get it. That was definitely a weird moment.
And you also, one thing that's always struck me about you is that you seem to know everyone as a result of that work you did for O'Reilly in the States. You ran conferences, you knew all the digerati. What were those people like? Did they come from, some of them seemed to be old hippies.
Yeah, so the philosophical foundations of all of this stuff was totally the idealism, the techno-libertarianism, almost without the overtones of we're the master race and everybody else should suffer that libertarianism has now. It was much more about just like free the information, let it all be free, wonderful things will happen. And so this was, I remember reading an amazing Wired article that connected it straight, I think Stuart Brand wrote it, straight back to the flower power in 1969, Summer of Love kind of ideals. And the same thing happened to them that happened to us. And I remember reading it thinking, not this time, fool. But totally, it gets co-opted. And the things that you create because you love creating, because you're exploring what's possible, because you're making love to this new medium and it's so exciting. And then suddenly someone's pimping your new medium out for ad bucks. And they're, it's essentially spyware online that you had no idea you were going to help create.
That's actually something that we tend to forget is that there was an incredibly purist philosophy in some quarters. I recall someone being told off for having their logo on their website because that constituted an ad. It was the idea of commercialising the internet was anathema back then, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The irony was I went to work for the guy whose company sold the first ad, right? It was building an ad-supported website. That was what O'Reilly did at one point. Well, I guess all of them are now ad-supported, so they still do it. But it was...
increasingly they're not.
It was interesting because Tim's a monstrous hippie, massive hippie. There's a great Wired profile of him talking about all the hot tub parties and the commune that he used to belong to with the guru, like that kind of Northern Californian hippie. And he's managed to retain a whole bunch of that. That's why I still love working with the man. Managed to retain a whole bunch of that idealism and the social good aspect of what's possible rather than simply selling out for the first and shiniest buck.
And that's literally where Foo Camp came from.
Yeah.
And you had a cunning plan. You took me to Foo Camp in California, so then I'd get it and I would then be obliged to help you do Kiwi Foo Camp, which was marvellous.
Basically infecting you and turning you into a vector, and that's
it
right.
It was.
So Tim, his company, publishing company, had built their campus, and my advice to you is if ever your company that is not a real estate company decides it needs to own real estate, brace yourself for pain. That is always a bad decision. So they built this magnificent campus. It looked like a retirement home, two fantastic buildings, just as the technology bust of 2001 hit. And so they had to lay off half of their company, and there was one empty building sitting there. And they're like, what are we going to do with it? And Sarah Wing, the head of communications, said, well, I've always wanted to tell people to belly up to the foo bar, because foo and bar are words like thingy in computing. And so it was a nerd joke, and I could make a nerd joke. So let's have a foo bar, and that became let's have a conference because their business was trend spotting. Their business was finding the stuff that's going to break and be huge in 18 months. So so you talk to everybody who's inventing the future right now to see what they're going to be shipping in 18 months, so that you know, gosh, this big data thing is going to be big. We should have some books on that, and people will buy your books when they're scratching their head going, what's this big data thing? So they, instead of going out and talking to everybody, they said, fuck it, let's throw a party and make them come to us. So they did. They threw the Friends of O'Reilly party, FOO. And it's an unconference. They don't decide the topics ahead of time. You create that on the first night, and then you have the perfect conference for you and whoever else is there over the next couple of days. It was amazing for networking the industry, that even though most of them were around Silicon Valley, they still weren't necessarily the best networked people in town, for getting that going. And when I came back to New Zealand, I knew Russell from the old days, and I couldn't believe how few people in New Zealand knew each other. Like at first I thought, oh my God, it's going to be like coming back to the Ozarks or something. It'll be hillbillies. These people won't know anything. But they were amazing. People in New Zealand do know amazing things. They just didn't know each other. So you would find pockets of ignorance that were huge about who else was doing the thing in your field, who else you could work with that would get this cool stuff done. So I asked Russell if he would help me seed that thing. And with Russell's seed, we made it real.
I'm moving on now.
Everybody drink.
Paul, you and I met when we worked at Computerworld.
That's right.
Let's look at a little video which features me talking about that.
Speaking of seed,
I really know what I'm talking about. Hugh, could we see me?
But there were lots of really good local stories to tell. But particularly, the year I started, 1996, a lot happened that year. And the ISP business, you had telecom coming in with extra, but it was still enough of a cowboy industry to make it really entertaining to cover. I mean, if I needed a story, I would just ring Nick with it, iHug, and keep him on the line until he said something crazy or interesting, and there was my story, and I'd go and do that. One thing that was really characteristic of that era where the internet really started to mainstream in New Zealand around the mid-90s was the size of the personalities. You had guys like John O'Hara at Voyager, you had the Wood Brothers at iHug, who were just wonderful rascals, and you had this guy, Chris Tyler, who was the founding general manager of Extra, who Rod Dean had found presenting at some conference in America, thought he was a genius and brought him back. And Chris Tyler was an extremely unusual person, and he was unusual to work with, I gather, and he was unusual to interview. And we got some stories out of that. And at one point he just disappeared, and Telecom wouldn't tell us where he was. So it was like that. And you had the so-called ISP wars, where Voyager discovered some really deeply alarming security flaws in the security system that Telecom had paid for Extra, and didn't exploit them in a criminal way, but exploited them in a taunting way, and that caused all sorts of alarm, so it was just great fun to cover.
Yeah, it's great.
And I actually do know where Chris Tyler went. I'm not sure whether I can say, given that it's on a live stream, but I'll tell you afterwards. Paul, you were there about the same time as me, and you took over some of my rounds when I moved on to different things. Did you feel the same, that there were these? It was like the early days of print or something.
That's right.
The people doing it were larger than life, and they were chances.
Absolutely right. They were, and there were a lot of cowboys around, and they made it very easy to write a story. If you were ever stuck for a front page story, it was either ring Nick Wood and wind him up, or I'd ring Trevor Eagle from Eagle Technologies, and you'd just get him talking. And next thing you know, he's saying something outrageous about, we'll never have women in the industry, and bloody, off he'd go. And that, great, keep going. You want to talk about fake news? This was the way to do it. And there were dozens of them, weren't there? There was, if you were really stuck and you needed some numbers, if you wanted some actual data, we'd go to IDC, to Graham Penn. Graham, I remember ringing him once. Graham, internet banking seems to be really popular. No, he says, no. There's probably only about 3,000 or 4,000 people who'll ever want to use the internet for banking. Oh, it's never going to catch on. Graham, hold on, I've got to write that down. That's a front page story. Yeah. And away it went. It was like that for a long period of time, right through the dot-com bubble. I mean, that was hysterical. There was a company, Aquarius Aquarius Web or Aquarius.com, and they were going to be the next big .com thing, and I was dispatched, go and find out who they are and what they do. So I found their offices in Auckland, and they were leased offices. There wasn't anybody there. Ring the phone number. It's just an 0800 number and a voicemail. Finally, I get hold of this guy, and he goes, "Oh yeah, Aquarius. Yeah, no, that's us. I said, "So what do you do? What do you do?" "We make aquariums." And so online, and I'm thinking, is this some new term? I don't know. Is it so? No, thick glassed aquariums for really big fish, and that's what we do. And we're based in China, and we've got an office in Auckland. And I said, so how are you web based? How is this a .com business? He said, oh, that's all a bunch of nonsense and malarkey. We just call it a .com, and everybody wants to write stories about us. And that was it. He was quite right. We all did. So I wrote a story about aquarium.
Well, the flow of new websites was such that there was actually someone compiled. Oh, I can't remember who it was. Don't know if you could. Someone compiled a list of new registrations in the
That's
.nz
right.
domain.
Yeah. And you could go through
and
them
it was
and see
like
who's
my
buying
best
stuff.
journalist secret because
Right.
I would just go and do it and do a who is, and you'd ring these companies and they were like, "How did you get our phone number?
Where did you find out about my new exciting project?"
They didn't
Yeah.
actually know their phone number was published on the internet.
That's right. Telecom had a whole bunch of stuff. When they bought GENI, that's where the story came from. They bought Computerland and GENI and set up this new conglomerate, e-Solutions, I want to say, and it was all published on the internet. And when we rang and asked them about it, they were horrified. How did you find this out? It's on the internet. This is all pre-Google. You had to use Alta Vista.
Well, actually, when Extra launched, the sysadmin showed me how to do reverse IP lookups.
Brilliant.
So we just, added a digit to the IP addresses and went through and looked at what we found. And all we did was publish the names of the servers, which turned out to have sci-fi monster names.
That's
so that was quite fun.
That's right.
But I gather it caused quite a degree of alarm in telecom because they thought they'd been hacked.
Oh, yes. Well, we did have the story when they were hackable with the voicemail that you could ring your own phone number. And you would get put through straight to your voicemail. So you could ring somebody else's phone number, and there was a certain code you could put in, and it would just start reading out loud their voicemail to you. And the head of Telecom Comms would not believe that we were doing this until we told him that his wife had just left him a message saying she was at the airport and she would be there in a couple of hours. And that was it. It was all on. From there were press conferences and police called and everything. It was quite exciting.
Well, actually, I mean, astonishing as it sounds, the security flaw that this basket case web developer in Brisbane that Chris Tyler had bought introduced to Extra. Every Extra email address had an underlying numerical ID, and you know how the numbers go across the top of a computer keyboard? And you know how there's a row of letters, QWERTY, underneath there?
They just matched.
The passwords mapped directly to the number key above, which could be discovered, the numerical ID could be discovered with a simple who is.
Yeah.
I sort of miss doing things like that.
It's all quite fun, wasn't it?
Those commands.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Who remembers, and actually, did anyone here work for flyingpig.co.nz?
Oh, there's a man. There he is. Hey, well done, Peter.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Flying Pig was Eric Watson's would-be Amazon killer.
It worked really well, didn't it?
It was the worst conceived company ever. They took the terrible Whitcalls website and
slapped 20% price mark
threw programmers at it.
It was quite horrible. Stefan Preston at bottom of College Hill, he took me in and showed me the warehouse where they would get all the goods from the Whitcalls warehouse, would be shipped to their warehouse. They then take them out of the boxes, put them in Flying Pig boxes, and send them on to the customers with an extra bill. And this was the future of retail. And I was going, so where's the value add?
Did these Muppets come before or after Ferret?
Before. This was pre-Ferret.
This is 1999, same year that Trade Me started.
Because I use Ferret as a case example of what not to do when I'm talking to people in startups, right? Don't spend a shitload of money solving the problem of your success before you have the first customer.
That's right.
Which is exactly what they did.
Yep.
To be fair, they started with a really small idea, and then the Saatchis at Telecom got into it and said, well, fuck, we can't do anything small, we're Telecom! So instead of starting small and growing as people found them and liked them, which
conceivably might have happened.
Worked. Yep.
Instead, they started big and guaranteed it wouldn't work at all.
But you know why they wanted to do that at all at Telecom? It's because Extra was always the country's biggest website until Trade Me came along. And then Trade Me beat them, and legend has it that a certain CEO at the time at Telecom said, well, just throttle their access, just don't give them connection, cut them off. And the lawyers sort of went, oh, I don't know that's really, you know, they are a customer, we might get into a spotted shop. And so, right, well, build a website and kill them. Here's a big wodge of money. Don't you miss those days? Yeah, that'd be quite fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, was anything learned from the first .com crash? Because I was working as a, and we'll talk about this in a moment too, Paul. It was a wonderful time to be a computer journalist because there was a lot of money flying around. But
yeah.
Basically, it all flew apart about 2000 or 1990, just after 2000.
Your good times are long gone. You're fucked, I think.
Yeah,
because, because your outlets are no longer so valuable, people won't be throwing that silly money at you. There's silly money again. There's more capital than there are places to invest it right now. So stupid shit gets invested in. Juicero, that was the one.
Uber for
right?
juice.
As an example of that, right? They'll send you squeeze bags with a barcode on it, and there's a machine that will squeeze your juice bag, which is actually sounds way more awesome than it is, because it is actually a bag of juice being squeezed.
It's not code for anything.
For insane amounts of money, and they'd received 150 million, something like that. It's just a fucking insane amount of money.
So is it going to crash again?
In the first tech boom, it was somewhat rational that you would need to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in companies because you had to buy servers and they were really expensive. And now, of course, you just rent them off Amazon and places like that. And getting your website up and running is dirt cheap. So there's no need to have that 160 million in an early stage startup. What did we learn from that? I don't think we learned that we shouldn't have bubbles. I think that's pretty much conclusively proven that that cyclic phenomenon is going to keep happening. What was really interesting was that when the money fuckfest ended and all their good times and lines of cocaine ran out, and suddenly the investors' money wasn't there and they didn't have the opportunity to go big anymore, all the parasites fucked off. So the end of the 1999 2000 time frame was full of wankers.
Flash wankers.
And the flash wankers fucked off. And it was great for shit to get a job. But in that time after then, if you were wanting to do something and create something, there wasn't a pack of besooted cockheads telling you what to do. And so a lot of great shit came out of that bust that led to the next boom, which is repeating the problems of the first one.
That's right. More wankers.
Well, when you look at the really big things that we feel we couldn't do without, Google, YouTube, Facebook came along,
Twitter
in the 2000s.
Flickr was the first one that really marked a comeback, I think, for the web, where suddenly there was somebody who was being successful and doing something people liked, and it wasn't just brochures online, which most of the other ones had been. And the Flickr's was also really cutting edge in the sense that the founding team included designers, which hadn't been the case before. For the longest time, it was a tech bozo and or a money bozo would be the beating heart of the company. And with Flickr, you actually got design in there, caring about the users and making something people loved, and it showed. If you were tracking the industry, you saw that as maybe the first.
The first ramp.
The first success, and then the ramp of companies doing that took off.
Because that'd be about the time that Firefox came back onto the scene, and suddenly things started getting exciting again in the browser wars. Microsoft won, and that was it. Everybody was on
Firefox lead developer, New Zealander Ben Goodger.
Ben Goodger, well, kind of New Zealander, but all of the I did like
he left.
He left. He left before he came here. So all of the pre-version 1 releases were all Auckland suburbs. So you get all these Americans talking about I'm on Mount Rascal, which was all very exciting, which was quite good. But I think that helped spur a lot more. It was probably about the same time, a lot more energy in the industry.
Now, Paul, we do need to get to. We keep mentioning a certain year, the year 2000, and I don't know if you people know, but Paul's claim to fame, what it'll be on his epitaph. He was the eyes of the world were on Paul on New Year's Eve, 1999, because New Zealand was just by the dateline, and everyone was looking at Paul to see
Fake news.
He didn't have a New Year's Eve. Tell us about that.
So it started about this is the Millennium Bug. Y2K. You're all too young. It's just embarrassing.
That was before they were born.
Don't even get me started. So it all started about a year or two before, and lunchtime at Computerworld, I'm playing Quake, as you do. And I can hear the chief reporter in the background, Andrea
Why is
Malcolm.
journalism dead? I just don't understand it.
I'll tell you about the 3-day working week in a minute too. That was really good. Curry and a beer and change from $10 down at the Asian food hall. It was fantastic. So Andrea's on the phone and I can hear her talking to somebody. She's going, "Oh yes, no, it's a big problem. Oh no, look, I think it's going to be a big issue for years to come. Yes. No, Paul Brislen's our guy. You can talk to him. Yeah, he'll be here all afternoon." And then the phone goes down. I say, "Great, so what was that, Andrea?" And she goes, "That's TVNZ. There's this thing called the Millennium Bug. Look it up. They're going to come to interview you in about half an hour." And bugger me, they did. And I was still busy going, what the hell is it? So dates, 1999 becomes 00. All of the world's computers crash. Oh, my God. And to be honest, I've spent most of the last 16 years annually reminding people that it actually was a real thing, that there actually were computer systems.
I still have that argument with people.
Yeah, they seem to think it was all a big con. But in fact, I know of several major systems that wouldn't have worked. Hospitals, a couple of the banks. There was a lot of money spent upgrading systems that should have been done years before. There were a few that didn't make it, and there are some very quiet court cases that didn't quite make it into the public space with millions of dollars. But yes, my claim to fame is that I spent New Year's Eve 99, 2000 at Telstra Clear's office up on Snails Farm. You know, the really antiseptic, dull, boring, bunker-shaped building that is really not very exciting. Well, they were all up on the roof watching the fireworks and kept running down to my little cubicle going, come and see, it's the new millennium. And I was going, I can't, I've got to ring everybody and find out. And all these American journalists were in town, and they were ringing me as well, saying, what's happened, what do we know? And nothing was going on, nothing broke. Nothing happened.
We had a bunch of American friends staying with us for the millennium, because we figured, if there was going to be the apocalypse, you might as well be somewhere nice. Yeah. So we thought we'd watch the dawning of the new millennium. It was in fact the gradual lightening of the grey of the new millennium, because Auckland, right?
Yeah.
So one of these folks brought her boyfriend with her, and Adam was a writer from New York, and he was there because he was convinced the world was going to end, and he'd left his girlfriend behind. And it's like, fuck it, I'm gonna die out here, and it'll be so romantic. And he'd never put on anything other than his dressing gown the whole time he was here. 4 days after, he figured, maybe the world's not going to end.
Maybe.
So he changed his ticket and he fucked off. He was like, he wasn't even willing to examine the wonders and beauties that New Zealand has to offer. He was totally an apocalypse tourist. That was all he wanted. Was that.
I'm going to run over a little bit here because we haven't got to something that I really want to talk about, and that's swag. Swag.
Swag.
I don't think people understand quite what it was like being an IT journalist.
You've got swag, haven't you?
In the late 90s. It was amazing. I went from being on the dole to travelling business class really quickly.
Overnight. You do, don't you? Yeah.
And you got used to it because people kept running these conferences. People like Nat kept running conferences, and companies would fly us to them.
Orlando, although the less said about Orlando, the better, frankly.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But one thing you did get a lot of was backpacks.
Backpacks and caps, lots of caps.
Oracle Open World 97, I stayed at the Hyatt West Beverly and ran into Marilyn Manson in the lift. That's the hotel that Led Zeppelin rode motorbikes down the hallway. So that was pretty exciting.
And Oracle.
And I had this enormous room service tab each day, and it was wonderful. And the really awful part was my friend, who was also going to Oracle Open World and was in fact a database admin, had to fly economy class on the same flight as I went business class, and he got food poisoning.
Missed the whole thing.
And he'd booked himself into this hideous motel in downtown LA near the conference centre, and had to go to a public clinic to get treatment for his food poisoning. And I did feel slightly guilty about being a journalist.
Whilst you were sipping on the champagne up in the front of the plane.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Paul, we need to talk about the Walt Disney Swan and Dolphin.
Oh my God! If you ever go to Disney World, beware the Swan and Dolphin. So these are two hotels opposite each other, aren't they? Across an artificial lake that for some reason is full of real crocodiles. Did you come across or alligators?
And what I
ask.
remember is that they painted the putting greens on the golf course.
Oh yeah.
They actually painted them.
Painted them green.
But I mean, you would think you would go to. You'd think, hey, I'm going to a conference. It's at Disney World in Orlando. Hey, that's great. Which is where Lotus always held their conferences. It was traumatic.
It was awful. And I don't know why they called it the Swan and Dolphin, because that was not a dolphin, that was a mackerel. This was somebody in marketing went, mackerel's not testing too well, we might have to change the name. And they left all the big models up. They're bloody fish everywhere. And it was vile. And everything was super sweet. Everything you ate was just so sweet.
And the hotel itself had no straight lines. It was all...
You had to walk around everything. Yeah.
The first morning I got there were life-size Disney characters wandering around. And I'd flown halfway around the world and I was feeling really dazed. And it was actually kind of traumatic to turn around and see Goofy.
Yeah, it's quite strange. The flight to get there, because you've got to go through Denver, haven't you? So I went with Citrix, and you do. It's like a 30-hour flight. I fell asleep interviewing the CEO of Citrix, Ed Yakubuchi. Next time you go, you okay, son? Do you need a glass of water? Because I just passed out.
Well, the general rule was that the more boring the conference, the more interesting place it was in.
Yep.
So the real core business, old school IT stuff, a guy called Randall Jackson, rest in peace, would do. And they were always in New Orleans. And he went to New Orleans so often he had a girlfriend there.
and he did try to put a fortune teller on his company credit card.
I think that may have been his girlfriend.
She was of dubious virtue. She was many people's girlfriend, I suspect. Right. Knowing Randall. Yes.
But let's talk about conferences, Nat, before we
you buggers had
go to another break.
You buggers had a much better experience.
I know.
We never ran
terribly
the
guilty about
engineers
it.
didn't, right? The closest the engineers got was
trying to make the PowerPoint work.
DEF CON in Las Vegas, which is the security conference. So it's a bunch of folks who basically look like punks and metalers because they're punks and metalers, rocking up, taking over a large hotel, and you just don't use an ATM when that show's in town. You leave your phone turned off. You don't bring your work laptop with you. There's a whole bunch of stuff you just don't do when that conference is in town. They had the Wall of Sheep, which was, they had a public Wi-Fi, which they promptly listened to everything that went across, and if they saw your password, and back in those days, back in those good, sweet, innocent days, everything was unencrypted, they would just read the username and password, and then they'd post it up on the board, and you made it to the leaderboard. Well done, you. Endless supply of numpties who would go to a security conference and used the free Wi-Fi.
Journalists mostly, I suspect.
Bless their little heads.
Yeah. We were not.
So do you have a question, Russell?
Just before we go to a break, I feel like, Paul, and I've discussed this with people like Chris Barton, I gained a lot from being an IT journalist because it gave me skills in explaining technical things in plain language. I actually had to nut things out. And now there's no IT press.
No.
And there's almost no IT journalists. Are we missing out there?
I think so. I think the thing that I got the most was that there were no stupid questions because, we had to, we didn't know anything, and somebody would just introduce a whole new thing to you that you'd never heard of before. It's all about storage area networks, and you've got to learn all about SANs, and you go, I don't know the first thing. So we'd all down tools, and we would research it, and you could ask stupid questions and get answers. And that's a great skill that I use constantly because I'm forever in situations where I've got no idea what's going on, and I just bimble around asking stupid questions. But these days, there is no coverage of tech as a separate entity. It's almost become a commodity, and nobody really seems inclined to cover the sector, certainly in the media, in any way, shape or form. Right, except for Vaughan and his very good Radio Live show, of course, Vaughan.
Yes, what time on Sundays, Vaughan?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. for all the apps you can shake a stick at. But that's it, isn't it? I mean, the days of a press conference with 20 or 30 journalists, I do get clients asking me today, can you organise a press conference? And after I picked myself up off the floor, I said, look, we'll just go round to Yuha's place and we'll just talk to him, because there's only one left, you know, that's it. It's really, I am quite shocked by it. I thought there'd be a lot more going on and a lot more coverage. Instead, it's gone the other way.
Yeah. Oh, well, and on that cheery note, we're going to take a break now and we'll bring everyone back and hopefully we have some questions from you. I think Sophia from Orcon is going to come around with the question jar and ask some irreverent questions, if you like. See you soon.
Preferably about Henry VIII.
Yes.
I love the way you spend your time talking alcohol. And then you're like, do we miss anything by not having it? Yeah. Do we miss anything by not having it?
I bought this photographic came for 10 years lapsed. I'll have to try and get them back now. $200,000. I haven't managed to use. You know how hard it is to use photography.
Oh, wow.
He always had a great news channel. He was a scammer. He always had a great news channel. What wavy internet? He had all these. Yeah. How are you? You good? What you have for is the ability
it's about 4 times a year. Well, basically what you're doing is you're packaging up the image. And the thing is that what happens is that the money moves from the vendors to the distributors, and they usually, they do the breakfast with the companies, and they basically do their own, workshops and stuff. So they don't need to go to the media. No.
I remember when I started in 2000 when I met all you guys. Like, I just come from my time as a accountant, got hired by an agency, and they're like, nobody wants to work in enterprise tech. If you want to do that, you can have a job. I'm like, okay, $2,000, man, that's cool. I'll do that.
I was walking out Southern Street, and I spotted a pile of rubbish with this unused conference pad, uniform 1993 pad, with a pen in it for Avion, like done as general service. It didn't work, I'm afraid. I was trying to work, it didn't work, but cool. All those names are all gone. All of them here. You're right. Really good. I'm sure some people can hold it.
Hopefully,
because of BRISLEN's link.
Oh, okay. I'll do that. Awesome, thank you. Right, go. You always say that. Yes, I am the poor man. Mic's on.
Hello, and we're back. Thank you very much, Matthew. This is the final part where we have a bit of fun, and I think Nat has some t-shirts, and you have given us some quite good questions, actually. So I'm going to ask the first one, which is actually a good, simple question. What's the first website you look at in the morning?
Ooh, wow, that's a good one. Ooh. Be honest. God, yeah, do I have to be honest?
Yes.
Sexy butts. No?
No, do we count Twitter as a website?
Twitter's a
Notes and
website.
app?
Twitter's a website, I guess. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's probably me too.
I'm working to break myself of that habit because I increasingly get less and less pleasure out of it and more aggravation.
But you've got to see whether it's worth getting up in the morning in case Donald's done something overnight. So Twitter's the only place you can go.
That has become my morning Twitter experience.
Isn't it?
Is kind of, oh my God, he's done what? Retweet.
Right. Bilious outrage.
It's the
Well, it's not even
Star
bilious
Trek
outrage,
damage
it's-
report. Tell me what's happened overnight. That's it. And he's like, oh my God, what's he done now?
My second website that I visit is What the Fuck Just Happened Today.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that good?
Beautiful, yeah.
That's the future of the media. You know, we've got a single issue, we're going to jump on it, and we're going to own it, and away they went. That's my favourite site. Yeah. Go on, tell us something
I
good.
don't know. It's just apps.
Ah.
Nothing too exciting.
Apps all the way down.
But yeah, you
Are
gotta
apps taking
determine
over
whether or
from
not you get out
websites?
of bed in the morning or not.
Yeah, I think apps are the future, though, aren't they? Are we getting... I know Tim Berners-Lee complains bitterly about apps removing the need for the web, but that's what's happening, isn't it? We're
It's
becoming
definitely an
app-based.
extension of the web, yeah.
So when you say apps, you're talking about, so you check the internet first on your phone in the morning.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Does it? Am I the only one with a desktop computer?
I know, I've got one of those. I retain that.
I still have about 12
It's got a
in my
hand crank.
garage.
Is it two-stroke?
No. I actually still have the Microsoft curvy keyboard because of the typing requirements, and I need to sit properly in the full noise. But yeah, still on a desktop.
Actually, show of hands, who still uses a desktop computer?
Oh, thank God!
Fewer
All the white
than
men.
half.
All the white men.
Oh, and,
There's some white women
and
going,
old
"What the
people.
fuck am I?"
Yeah. No, they're misguided.
Yeah. Is there anyone under 30 who... No, okay. Right, oh well, that went well.
Old and redundant.
And then our next one is in fact a William Gibson quote. The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. True or false?
Absolutely true.
Absolutely.
Premised my entire life on finding the bits of the future that aren't mainstream yet and then sharing them. Yes.
Kind of me too, actually.
I'd say it's absolutely true, but and it's not going away anytime soon. The digital divide in New Zealand is still a major concern of mine. The rural customers, the people who should benefit the most from connectivity, are the ones who get the shittiest, most expensive, decrepit service later in life. So the faster we can get them online, the faster we can look after some of the rural and regional communities, and the more opportunity we've got to actually not homogenise the entire thing, and we'll all end up looking like Americans. So I think
I'll
it's very
insert
important.
a fist wave there as my small rural town is not getting any fucking
Thank you.
fibre anytime soon.
You don't need fibre. You've got the... Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. I must say, when I look at where we might take our capital, middle-class baby boomer capital gain nest egg, I did notice that Mangawhai is getting UFB. So.
Yeah, but have you been to Mangawhai?
Yes! Don't be rude! Oh no, now we're getting Hibiscus Coast rivalry.
Oh, yeah. The
Hibiscus
coasters.
Coast, fuck off! Sorry.
No comment.
No comment?
What are your views on Nat's living arrangements?
On the future.
Yeah, back to the original question, absolutely yes. And kind of to touch on what Paul mentioned, I think worldwide there's entire countries and continents that have, very slow internet, and they access it only from mobile devices. And I think as people that work in tech, we need to take that into consideration when we're building things.
Absolutely right. There's a huge opportunity there, isn't there? Because countries like India are coming online, but they're not doing it through the same medium that we are. It's purely off the cell phone, and that's quite powerful. Yeah.
It's worth noting that we in New Zealand have had third world internet connectivity for a while, but it wasn't until the first world had tapped out the first world as profits and they started turning their glazed caustic eyes towards India as a source of revenue, that they started building sites that worked offline for the very environment that we've been putting up with for a decade using their crap.
Yeah.
Not that I'm better.
Flash sites. Oh, I miss Flash.
Out.
Katie, I'm before we move on to another audience question, I'm fascinated that you have 3 different companies, which makes you look quite entrepreneurial. Why is that, and is it easy enough to do?
I'm not sure I'd say it's easy, but like you mentioned earlier, maybe I like making things difficult for myself. But yeah, so at the moment my main company is WebScope, and we're the ones that build kind of, you know, business systems and software and things like that. But it's not all boring business stuff. We also do the Green Party website. So there is some, good stuff in there.
And the Bitcoin Bank, I want to know about that.
Yeah, so that is the same 3 founders of WebScope. We developed that. So a few years ago, I was getting into Bitcoin, and you know, it was, at the time it was like really hard to buy it, and you kind of had to save up money and then like do international bank transfers and wait 10 days, and you'd be sitting there watching like the charts being like, do I buy it now or do I wait? It was like really hard, and this is back when it was like $30 a Bitcoin, right? And I just kind of thought like it'd be really nice if I'd be able to just kind of automatically buy a Bitcoin each week. And so I started looking around for a service like that, and there wasn't one, so we built it.
Right, so it's like having an automatic payment into PayPal, which some people have as well.
Yeah, so it's just like setting up an automatic payment, and you send it to us each week, and then each week we deliver you Bitcoin to your Bitcoin wallet.
That's awesome, because I always thought buying drugs online looked way too hard.
There's an app for that.
Can you or anyone else on the platform concisely explain blockchain to me?
No.
Because everyone's talking about it and I don't get it.
No.
I can Google blockchain. That's about my limit.
Just to give him 30 minutes and he'll research it all online and
That's
have
right.
the pithy solution for you. No,
I imagine if anybody knew what blockchain was, if it was easy to understand, then it wouldn't be worth anything.
That's right.
Oh, good point, yeah. But it does seem to me it's quite an odd situation where there's this thing that looks like it may have a major influence on society, not just in banking, but in all kinds of trust relationships.
You want me to give it a shot?
Yeah, give it a go.
All right.
No, you're wrong.
In banking, how much money do you have? You trust the bank to keep track of that shit for you. And there are a lot of things where you want a record of what's going on, and you want everybody to be able to inspect the record, and you want to agree to it, but you don't want to trust one party because they're corruptible, they're useless. So you use cryptography and the miracle of public key encryption to be able to all collaborate on this one shared record that everybody can verify what's gone into it, that nobody's lying, they're not cheating, you all agree. And so one of the reasons it has the potential to make a shitload of money for people is things like the stock exchange, where the current system of, I'll buy a share of Spark stock from you. Yeah, right, so wait like 2-3 days for this transaction to go through everybody's hands as they're like, well, does he really have it? Well, he doesn't have it, but the place that holds his version of the stock has a record with his number in it. Let me check with them. Right? All of that kind of palaver, potential to drop all of that crap and replace it with some not very simple technology, but which removes a lot of the delays.
Removes ambiguity?
Yep.
Would that be a fair way of putting it?
Think of the lawyers. Who will think of the
We're
lawyers?
going to automate them soon. It's okay.
Yep.
Yeah. They're next.
It's actually quite appealing.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, a system that
Automated
makes lawyers
lawyers?
unnecessary. No, lawyers unnecessary.
Because it's called Whakapapa, but you have to get it right every time.
Yes, sounds a little bit like it, yes. Yeah. Okay, here's another question for all of you. Did you ever think the internet would churn out dank memes like dick butt?
What else are we going to do with it? I mean, come on, honestly. The future repository of human knowledge. I've got access to more information now than at any time in the past. Of course we're going to turn to cat videos and dank memes like dick butt.
I guess there is a more serious side to it. I don't know how many of you read the interview with the Sandy Hook dad in The Guardian last weekend, who admitted that he had been something of a conspiracy theorist himself until his daughter was shot at Sandy Hook, and he was deluged really brutally, brutally by Sandy Hook truthers who were mutually validating their hideous fantasies that had been, it was a hoax.
It was all made up as a false flag.
And he actually, there's quite a good quote in there where he said, we thought the internet was going to bring us all the best of things, and it brought us this.
See, that's the problem, I think. The internet brings you all the things.
Thank you.
Regardless, and it's up to us to identify. So it's a terrible time to be a journalist because nobody will pay you, but this is the ultimate time to be in journalism, and everybody is in journalism. It's now incumbent on us to constantly question what we're being presented with, whether it's a factual program from the BBC or that tweet about Prince Philip. You've actually got to verify it yourself. You cannot rely on anyone else. And some of the skills we've learned as journalists go right to the core of that. That's what we do. It's that sceptical, questioning nature. Hang on, let me just follow this trail. Oh yes, you are all repeating the same made-up fact. You've actually got to, we've got to train our kids to do this because they're going to be bombarded their entire lives. My kids are getting quite good now. I say, what's that smell? And they go, it's marketing, Dad. And that's what I'm training them up for. If you can smell it, it's marketing, and you've stepped in it. That's what they've got to identify, because they're getting stuff pushed at them. Girls, online, pre-teens, that's a nightmare. I would not wish that on anybody. So I think that's quite right. You've got to train them up.
The point at which websites are providing the framework for ordinary people to provide the content, it's kind of like you're just going to get a massive brain dump of everything from everyone.
That's right. All the time.
And that was the promise of it, right? So the promise of it was that anybody could publish, whereas before the ability to be read was given to a select few.
Oh, yes.
And
those were the days.
And so tearing down those walls means that the fucking nutters and the assholes get just as much of a... I'm allowed to say fucking nutters and assholes?
Yeah, no, I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
All right, good. That they get as much of a platform as the righteous, true and just.
And we've seen where that leads.
But it's not, the thing is, we're talking about now, we're talking about not just humans having an audience, we're talking about Russian botnets having an audience and manipulating the beliefs of quite a large number of people. You know.
But I think just this week we've seen that backfire. So with the French election, with the dump there, that clearly didn't have the
It was
desired
so obvious.
reflex. It was so obvious. And so we've rapidly moved to the point where people are now going, oh, hang on a minute, we've got the reverse conspiracy theorist coming to the fore. I have hopes that means that we're all learning from this. The sales of the New York Times have increased dramatically since Donald Trump said, that's a failing business model. And it is a failing business model. But for the short term, at least, people want news and they want verifiable information. And they're starting to turn to trusted sources, and they're starting to trust certain sources over and above others, and I think that probably bodes quite well for the future of media, if nothing else.
Who out here in the audience contributes some money either voluntarily or as a subscription to an editorial organisation? Not bad. Leave your hand up if it's more than one. So most people who do it, more than one. I mean, I also take money for public address as well through Press Patron, which is a great little platform, and I really hope it goes well for Alex Clark in Wellington who created it. But it's kind of interesting because I give money voluntarily to The Guardian. I just took out the New York Times subscription, and I subscribed to the New Yorker. Oh, yeah. It was a toss-up between the Washington Post and the New York Times, and I think the Washington Post annoyed me that week. So,
well, they just kept making more and more offers until I finally cracked and went, well, that's a ridiculous price. Of course, I'll give you some money for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think I've got a year's worth for $50.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna. I think Talking Points Memo is my next one. I feel a bit guilty because they're a small organisation and I read it every day. So, do you guys?
Yeah, but what annoys me is that the ones that I pay for still keep emailing me with really cheap offers, and I'm like, I've already subscribed for a year. Why are you doing this?
Tidy up your databases, people.
You've got my credit card details on file.
Yeah, I know, that is rather annoying. Yeah. I'm delighted to see them actually making a go of this whole. It's almost a semi-paywall model, and it seems to be working. There's a lot more demand for it.
Yeah, and I think everyone needs to, keep in mind that if you're not paying for something that you're using or reading, then
that's right.
You're
the
what's
product.
happening. You're the product.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, next question. Do you think online voting will happen soon? Oh, this is controversial on Geeks.
Ooh, it's so...
Yes, through the blockchain.
Through the blockchain. Yeah, maybe that's the only way it's going to happen.
And I'm like...
You're shaking your head.
No. Everything on the blockchain is public. So that gets rid of, unless you add another layer of technology to it, which every layer of technology introduces security problems, I think, no, it's not going to happen. I'm so profoundly against online voting. I can't overstate it. Terrible fucking idea. Terrible. I mean,
You want to list some?
Sure. So government departments, banks, political parties. Who hasn't been hacked at this point? When there's something as high value as who becomes the Prime Minister or the President, yeah, sure, I think somebody's going to go after that. Even when it comes down to, and you say, well, okay, sure, it's not high value if it's just like fucking council by-elections and regional,
health boards,
provincial bollocks.
Yeah.
But your technology that does the hacking and breaks into things is just as accessible to those targets as it is to the bigger ones. So it's I feel like the vulnerabilities are shared, even though the scale is smaller. So you might think I won't attract the attention of the Russians, but you'll attract the attention of some disgruntled IT engineer in Howick who will proceed to make your regional election shit. And the trouble with the digital stuff is there's no paper to go back to say, well, was it a scam? Let's have a look at the hanging chads. There are no digital chads. There's no track record that you can go back and say, it was fucked with, or no, it's fine. Digital's all you've got.
And also, I guess there's the other thing, way below the hacking level, is that there's such a thing as the sanctity of the voting booth. Only one person can go into a voting booth, and there are possibly households where
one person might be coerced by another person in the household into casting a vote a particular way. Yeah, that is definitely a challenge. Although the people would say at this point, with mail-in ballots, that's perhaps already lost.
Yeah. And on the topic back to blockchain, my company does have an idea for creating something where there are ways around being coerced into voting or selling your vote. But,
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll have to see what happens with that.
Get the patents going.
That could be quite useful
in all kinds of areas.
In other countries.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. This one is, tell us what's so great about the internet today, brackets, I just deleted social media.
Ooh. Who was it? Open up. Come on, you can tell us. Who got off the internet? Come on. No, he's leaving. Look, he's off. That's it. Run. We know where you live.
Oh, okay.
There's two of them.
Right.
Give us some good news.
Get in.
What's great about the internet today?
I'm still thinking.
Okay, probably the news sites. Actually, I think that there is more good journalism available on the internet than there's ever been.
Yep.
I was just going to say long-form media.
Yeah, if you gave up the internet rather than social media, you'd find your life was much smaller and sadder, because information used to be locked away in books that only a few people had access to, and you used to have to go to specific places to learn things, and now you get to do it everywhere. It's a bit... People who piss on the internet because they don't like social media feel like anti-vax people who are like, you and your fucking old age can tell me that science and vaccination is a bad idea simply because you fucking exist thanks to it, right? You have no conception of the hypocrisy and small-mindedness present here.
Well, and I must say, going back to the original...
Keep hissing, I've got a microphone.
Yeah, the original government website. I think we forget that before government went online, most official information was available to a very small number of people.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It was very hard to get.
And the legislation of the country wasn't freely available online or offline. And in fact, even when it went online, it was still the very first attempts to digitally sell legislation it came on a CD. And the people who made the CD weren't that keen about early adopting onto the web because it was unclear how you could make people pay for it. And this is the rules that we all live by, which in the past you had to pay money in order to find out what they were. So, the internet's a fucking amazing thing. Social media is a festering cesspit. But,
a scab. You're quite right, because that's right. Paid for company office searches, official information requests. We can put them in online and get answers back.
We live in the golden age of information for journalists.
The only one that's outstanding, of course,
us,
is judgments from the courts. The courts are resisting the urge to be dragged screaming into the 21st century.
They can get fucked.
And the courts process got backed up.
A lack of a proper digital open strategy.
I think that's right. Yeah, they went down one track and then discovered that the judges actually had ideas of their own. Another case of let's not bother talking to the users about it. But no, you're quite right.
These two. Best thing on the internet.
I'd like to stand up in favour of social media. My mum died about 7 years ago of cancer, and before she died, basically she was bedridden, and she found friends on Facebook, not just friends who she already knew, but she was playing these silly little Farmville games and she was meeting people through that. She found a forum online which was basically a whole bunch of people who all had her very, very rare form of cancer, and they were swapping stories and swapping research, as well as also just being that really solid support network. And it was obviously a real plus in her life at the time. I myself, like, you know, I wouldn't be into K-pop if I wasn't on the internet. And this year I'm doing a world tour, and I'm meeting like about 7 or 8 different girls that I know on the internet. We're going to hang out and, you know, have fun. They're gonna, and like, you know, 7 different cities in the US.
Paul does that. Paul does that, and he gets a load of shit for it.
You only go. Yeah, no, we won't go there. I need more wine. More wine, please. Thank you.
Social.
Putting the social
if you're
back
doing
in
the
social
social
media.
thing, I mean, I couldn't find a Twitter account for you.
It's
Katie.
at KatieBot.
Oh, there you go. I've seen it too. Damn.
There you are.
Because I mean, I put my hand up. I do feel like I have a dopamine addiction related to Twitter, but I love it, and I find so much stuff through it, and it's
you're a journalist,
it's my
so
way into information.
You produce opinions and reckons, and I started viewing opinions and reckons as toxic. And so when you open up Twitter and all I find are opinions and reckons,
I try and
I'm
make
getting
mine,
the negative version.
I try and
rather than the
produce
positive.
epigrams. I think
that's
rather than just.
So
I like
the trick,
I like
too.
them to actually be.
I'm going to reread your
pleasing
feed now. Yeah,
I like them to be pleasing rather than just ranting.
If you sing them, they come out much better. So the trick to managing social media is to manage it, and the block button is your friend, the mute button, and also just unfollowing those things. If they don't make you happy, just get rid of it. Just actually, I don't need to hear this bullshit from that Adam Gifford guy. He's forever going on about bloody something. Or I'll just unfollow him.
And I would also recommend recognising that there are arguments that you do not need to participate in. It took me a long time to learn that, because I'm always up for no.
But somebody on the internet's wrong, Russell. We've got to stand up for what's right. Do not feed the bear.
Yeah, no, it's just that there are arguments I do not need to be part of, and it took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before we wrap.
We're wrapping?
Yes, we are. We're actually... Oh, very good.
What song?
I've got an app that does that. When everything goes wrong, is New Zealand still a good place to be?
Well, we don't know how lucky we are.
Ask Peter Thiel. You know, but actually, I mean, this is relevant because there are a whole lot of
things
fucking Silicon
wrong.
Valley libertarians apparently looking to survivalise themselves here, aren't there?
That's right. But at the end of the day, as he reaches down for his grandmother's jawbone, no, we don't know how lucky we are. This is an absolutely gorgeous place to live. We've got fantastic internet access if you want it. You don't have to. The politicians aren't quite efficient enough to completely fuck us over, so we can actually get some stuff done. Auckland might be large and growing and the traffic's awful, but you can work from home or you can come to the cafe and just get the free Wi-Fi, except for Nat's Wi-Fi. I would not base myself anywhere else, I don't think. This is the century for New Zealand coming up. And with technology as an export overtaking, catching up with tourism and catching up with farming, you know, this is going to be a very interesting time in the tech sector for the next... how long have we got? 30 years?
Yes.
And the difference between technology and...
world.
Yeah.
The difference between technology and tourism is that you're going to make a whole lot more as a worker in technology than you are in tourism. And in that respect, it's a great thing for New Zealand, yeah. Adam?
Yeah, touching on what Paul said.
You've just come back from New York, so...
Yeah, I'm jet lagged as fuck, so sorry. But, yeah, touching on what Paul said, I'm looking forward to the day where MPI is actually focusing on technology, because I think we're in a really great place in New Zealand where we do have a lot of fantastically skilled people who have great ideas and can do this stuff, and that's one thing that you can export very easily digitally.
Too right.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that New Zealand's small and nimble enough to change tech where we need to, politically and socially and economically. I don't know if that's true, but...
Yeah, and I must admit, I think I've been hearing arguments about how we should be backing tech ventures over dairy for about the last 20 years, and the opposite keeps happening. But we can only hope, and I think the tourism thing's a good thing, because if it makes us clean up our act and clean up our rivers, then that is a good thing. And before we go, Nat, I notice you have a T-shirt.
Show you that some things don't change. This is a shirt from 1993, 94, and it says,
where are you?
The internet is full, go away.
With a 33.6K modem, probably. At
Exactly.
That
Exactly. That very small pipe was full.
And oddly enough, every time someone predicts that, it doesn't come true, and the internet never fills up, and the pipes never fill up. So that suggests that, you know, perhaps there is a future. And we'll end on that note. Thank you please thank Nat Talkington, Paul BRISLEN, Heather GAYE, and Katie Graham, and Orcon, and Golden Dawn, and DJ Doug.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you. Oh yes, and William Cooper Barling is about to play inside. We've got 10 minutes? 5? Okay. He's really cool, actually. He's a New Zealander based in Sydney. He's an interesting dude. Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
That'll be good. We're putting on the phones, though.